My job is not to be someone's healer. If I put that cloak of healer on me, believe it or not, my spiritual job, whether I like it or not, is to fail that person. And this is why medicine is failing the population constantly.
Welcome to The Healing Blueprint. I'm your host, Jill Briansky. On this podcast, I speak with experts from traditional and holistic healing modalities. And together, we share insights, tools, and practical guidance so you can create your own healing blueprint. Let's move into today's episode and get started. Have you ever felt like your heart was pulling you in one direction while your mind was pulling you in another? Today, I'm excited to welcome Tommy Priester, creator of Heart-Mind Integration, to explore how reconnecting these two powerful parts of ourselves can open the door to profound healing and transformation. Tommy, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. It's an honor to be here.
So you created this system, Heart-Mind Integration, or HMI, as we'll probably be calling it. What brought it on for you? How did you connect these two parts?
Kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it shorter for you. As I was going along as an herbalist, I recognized that herbs were fantastic, amazing medicine, but I recognized that they were palliative. In other words, when somebody took an herbal protocol for a specific issue, often that issue would get better, and then they would stop doing the herbs, and that issue would slowly come back. So that made me seek, and I found flower essences. And flower essences worked by opening the doorway to the subconscious and allowed a deeper sense of healing. But I still noticed that the flower essences weren't fully transformative. They were, again, opening that doorway or the aperture to the subconscious a little further. But as soon as you stopped taking the flower essences, things still slowly went backwards, back to a standard way. So, and my wife and I, Karen and I, for many years, we're doing sun dancing. It's a Native American, one of their highest spiritual experiences. And in the sun dance, you have to do a 4-day vision quest, which is no food, no water for 4 days in the wilderness, guided by an elder. So during these vision quests, I would get these downloads of information. And it was amazing. And what's crazy is you're not allowed to write anything. You're not allowed to have a pen and paper. You're not allowed to have a book. It's all about prayer. It's all about centering, finding your center with the divine. And I got these downloads, and I had a tobacco tin and I had my knife. So I actually carved into the tobacco tin these teachings so I wouldn't forget any of it, because I'm not trained like Native people. Native people are trained to remember, and we're trained to document. So I had to document it so that it could get into my psyche. So I got these downloads again and again, and I would bring them back to my clients. And you were one of those people where we experimented with these downloads, and the downloads were all about how do you open the mind and bring the mind into alignment with self, and then how do you bring that consciousness into heart consciousness in balance with each other and become the witness. And this is probably the most important teaching that anyone can learn. And so I practiced that with my clients, and when we did, we would meet personality parts, and these personality parts were usually in anxiety or anger or loss or some kind of issue. And we would start these conversations with these parts, and, profound healing was able to happen. So we can talk more about that, but
yeah.
I'm hoping.
And I was with you at the beginning of that journey, as you said, and I actually didn't even know you were at the beginning of that journey. I think I had just met you doing an herbal apprenticeship, and you're like, hey, let's try something. I was like, okay. And the work that you do, connecting to the parts, is very similar to what social workers and psychologists have been calling internal family systems, or IFS. But yours, I've noticed, varies in many, many different ways. And I know that you're familiar with IFS, and I'm wondering if you can speak on the differences between that modality and your modality.
So in general, IFS is parts work, right? And in general, my work is parts work. The differences are that one main difference is that IFS practitioners or psychologists only give you 55 minutes if you're lucky. And so you only have 55 minutes to be able to get to the part, get into the story. And they, from my perspective, there's just not enough time. So, every client gets an allotment of 2 hours, and I still do that to this day. You get an allotment of 2 hours, and I only charge you for the time we use. So that ensures that when we end the session in a good way for the part that got worked on, and for the psyche that has to adjust to that part shifting its consciousness, or on whatever level it has shifted its consciousness. And in the heart-mind integration work, not only is there no limit to the time in that way, there's also no limit to the direction. So the very first person I ever did heart-mind integration healing with was an acupuncturist. And this woman came to me and said, I got this thing that just keeps it's so in my way. I feel so stuck. I said, well, okay, well, let's journey let's see what that is. And I call it dropping in. So we dropped in, and immediately, in a fraction of a second, we tuned into the feelings, and the part were catapulted into a past life. The very first journey I ever did. And we're looking at the situation where this woman was a woman in the past life. She was a healer back in the 1500s, and she was murdered by her 3 closest friends and left to, her body left upside down, face down in a river. And so we did what we do in HMI. We was like, okay, so this represents a personality part. It doesn't represent her whole self. It represents a part of her that got stuck back there. So we went to that part. We gently lifted her out of the water. We brought her back to life and healed all of the causes of her death. And unbeknownst to me, there was more work that needed to be done there, but we brought her into what I call her heart chamber, into the center of her heart consciousness. And in a fraction of a second, all 3 of those people that murdered her were in her heart chamber. And I was like, okay, shamanically, that's not okay. You guys are not supposed to be here. And they told us that she had to forgive them. That was the only way they could leave. So these journeys teach me and have taught me and will continue to teach me. At this point in time, I started this work in 2006. I've been doing this now for 20 years. I have at least 25,000 hours of doing journey work with people directly. So that was a crazy experience. We got her to the point where she could forgive them. So we had to do enough healing on this part of her so that part could forgive them. And she had to release her contractual trauma belief structure before that could happen. She did. And she chose higher consciousness, and then she forgave them. Boom, like that, they all went home to spirit, where their spirit essences have been waiting for them. So that was my very first journey. And what I've come to understand since then is what I just described is what's called a karmic knot. So, and everybody has them. Okay. So if there's a karmic knot to people that we have trauma with, karma doesn't mean that I did something bad, so I deserve to have something bad done to me. Karma is unfinished business. It's just unresolved trauma. And if we don't resolve it in that past life, when we get born into the next life, if you believe in reincarnation, which to me is it's not a belief structure. It just is. Mm-hmm. I've just gone back to past lives with so many people. Let me say this about this. When we do HMI work, we don't go in with an agenda to fix something. We go in to discover what needs to be fixed. So in her case, we didn't go with an agenda to go to that past life. We didn't even know it existed. What we did was we tuned into the personality part that was holding the trauma, and that part took us right to that past life. Right. So these karmic knots that exist for all of us, what happens is that part of us that's stuck back there in that past life is corded into this life. As soon as we're born, even from the moment of conception, that part is corded into this life, but it's only able to be half present here and half present there. So you can't have full presence of this personality part. And it's bringing its trauma-based contractual belief structure into the present life. As long as we have a trauma-based belief structure like that, this present life's job is to reactivate that belief structure by creating new trauma that triggers it. And I believe that our karma is part of why we come to another lifetime, is to challenge ourselves to eventually face and heal those things. So that was a big mouthful.
That's it. So let's go back a little bit and touch on a couple of things that you said, just to go a little bit deeper, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I think first, I want to say that I do believe that one of your superpowers and something that you're really good at is really holding space and listening and understanding and witnessing not only the person, but that part as well, and holding those two spaces together. And not everybody can do that, but you do that exceptionally well. The things that you tapped on. So you very briefly said the word shamanism, and I think that that is an important part of your structure and what you do. And so I would like you to talk a little bit about how that comes into play and its connection to this dropping in. What does it mean to drop in, and how would somebody who does not know your work be able to do that?
So this is a really key thing. And I just want to say, I don't claim to be a shaman. I don't say I'm a shaman. I think that's a modern thing that has gotten abused in our culture. But I do guide people. This is the key difference. I do guide people into the shamanic realm. I don't go into the shamanic realm with them. I am a tracker. I'm a spiritual tracker. That's my job. My job is to track the story, document it. And if you were able to look at one of my papers, there's not a blank white spot on the paper. It's from edge to edge, notes, front and back. And that's my job, is to document. But also my job is to know what is the next step. No matter what shows up, no matter what happens, what do we do with it? Where do we go? And so I have some really nice, deep, intuitive connection and guides. And sometimes I get to a point, and this is how this work developed. There was many points, like the one I just told, where I didn't know what to do. I'm like, what do we do with this? And all of a sudden, my intuitive gift is knowing. So I get the language of knowing the words to say for each step. And I emphatically trust it. And it's through the years of developing it that I can trust it. As a tracker, as a spiritual tracker, tracking the story and guiding the next step, I stay out of my client's field. This is really, really important. It's so important to me that I teach this in the first level of the Herbal Apprenticeship Program every year. And I teach it in every level of the Herbal Apprenticeship Program as well. My job is not to be someone's healer. If I put that cloak of healer on me, believe it or not, my spiritual job, whether I like it or not, is to fail that person. And this is why medicine is failing the population constantly. Because what people do when they go to a shaman or a healer, right? That's all the word shaman means, is healer, right? So when people go to a healer, they hand over their power. I don't want their power. I want to get them to be powerful. So taking their power only weakens them, makes them more dependent on somebody else. So heart-mind integration and healing is a set of personal tools. My job is to convey those tools. And in the beginning, I teach people through experience how to use these tools. And I have a support group the fourth Thursday night of every month for people to come and practice these tools and get reminded about these tools. And the first tool that you mentioned is dropping in. So I have found that 99% of everybody can drop in when guided how to do so. And you spoke earlier, before we started talking offline, you spoke about the vagus nerve, which is an incredibly important part of dropping in. So I've learned over the years, I've tried many different methods. The fastest, easiest method is this. You take a deep breath in through your nose, but not into your upper lungs, into your lower lobes. So you stretch out the belly with that breath. and hold it for 5 to 10 seconds. When you do that, you're activating, you're literally stretching the vagus nerve. That activates it and brings it online. Then when you exhale through tightly pursed lips as if you're blowing a kiss, like that. Really slow, twice as long on the exhale as the inhale. That activates the vagus nerve, and that person's, I'm going to curse. Am I allowed to curse?
I mean, I'd prefer if you downgrade it a little.
That person's crappy committee.
Better.
In other words, their ego instantly goes quiet. The words in their head disappear and they're in alignment with self. They're able now to be guided as the witness, not as the part, right? And so let me let you jump in there.
So you had just mentioned something again that I just want to back up to for a second and highlight is this idea of not being the answer to everything and not having to know everything and showing up in a humble way and saying, we're going on a journey together. I'm a guide to help you with these things, but we're doing it together. And that's such an important aspect of what you do.
Yeah.
That coupled with the witnessing piece, I think really brings your work to a different level.
Yeah, I fully agree. And simply put, my job is to teach a person how to make fishing line, how to make the hook, how to make the rod, how to catch the bait, and how to catch the fish, right? If I do any of it for them, then I'm failing, right? So I have to teach these tools to my clients and teach them how to drop in and get them to practice that. And there's also this piece around sometimes we'll work on a personality part that shows up, and that personality part in one session's not able to fully heal. So we put that part in what I call the waiting room. That's the heart chamber, right? And it's not merged back into oneness. It's not merged back into one's essence or higher consciousness. It's still in the waiting room and it needs more attention. And so these tools are my client's tools. I just have to convey them. So I give my client a responsibility once a day or once every 3 days or once a week to go in and hang out with this part from a place of radical, unconditional love with no agenda. And this is actually how this work works, right? You can't have an agenda. The second you have an agenda, your other parts, okay, let's back up the big picture. The average person has about 35 personality parts by the time they're 35 years old, and that's without any, repetitive severe abuse. So the average person walking down the street who doesn't have had what they might consider to be a perfect childhood. Right. So, but you can't have a bunch of personality parts without having a governing structure. And the governing structure is what we call the ego. And the ego is made up of these 7 to 9 personality parts that are in a state of hierarchy. This is really important. So there's a first level, second level, third level, and a fourth level. The first level are 3, maybe 4 personality parts that are identified with us, with our voice, with our song, with our education, with our looks, all of that kind of stuff. Now, these are day-to-day personality parts. These personality parts can't handle bigger trauma, but their job is to keep us from feeling everything that's hovering underneath the surface subconsciously all the time. So they use identity to do that. They use busyness, they use their job, they use, et cetera, to be able to manage all of that stuff. But behind the scenes, waiting with hypervigilance are the second level. And behind the scenes of the second level, waiting is the third level. And behind the scenes of the third level is primal, waiting in hypervigilance. Now, what that means is they're expecting the original things that hurt us to happen again. And they project that out into the world as we walk in it, all to keep us from feeling the past, right? So let's say, you're with your boss and your boss is controlling and your boss pushes that controlling button and you just happen to have a button that It feels like, not good enough because you've been controlled by your mother or your father. And the next thing you know, you're triggered. A part of you takes over and you're defensive or you're dissociative. Well, and dissociative can have many meanings, but you might go numb. You might not be able to get your words out. You might turn bright red. There's a million different scenarios of a trigger, but whoever that part is that just took over, that's going to be that second level defense mechanism. What's cool about this is the second level defense mechanism doesn't care about the first level managers at all. They're actually competition. So the second level jumps in and pushes that first level out of the way, and the second level takes over as kind of a superhero, right? But what if the trigger continues? That button keeps getting pushed by that boss, right? And the boss, you got a little defensive, and now the boss is getting angry, and now you're getting scared, so the third level takes over. And when this third level personality part takes over, it's much more dissociative. It's much more intense. It's much more, it could be an anxiety attack. It could be depression. It could be like a billion different things. It's unique to each person's subconscious structure. Everyone has these stages, but everyone has different personality parts in different positions in these stages. So when you meet somebody and you're like, hey, that person's really cool, you're not meeting them. You're meeting the personality part that is identified as them. Their true consciousness is hidden away. Okay, I see a question.
So yeah, there's a question, because this, for those that don't know this work, might start feeling a little bit complicated and a little bit scary and overwhelming. And I'm wondering if you've ever had someone who either can't drop in or who doesn't understand. What do you do with someone who's a complete novice and doesn't know anything about any of this?
Yeah. I rarely explain this work the way I'm explaining it now to my clients. Basically, if you were a client, I'd say, okay, Jill, so, I might ask, where do you feel blocked in your life? And they'll say, well, blah, 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 blah. I'll say, okay, well, now that you've tuned into that, let's become the witness of it. And so I guide them in the breath through the nose into the lower belly, hold that breath. I guide them through that process. I've already made them a flower essence. So they're holding their flower essence. They're not taking it internally. They're just holding it. It has a profound impact when you hold a flower essence. And I guide them to become the witness. And we become the witness of the somatic senses in the body. And I say, now that you have this understanding of this block, now let's find that block in the physical body. Notice where the body's holding tension or pain or numbness, tingling, whatever sensations you can find. So I guide them, and not just to notice, but to fully open their heart in radical love and acceptance of those sensations. This is key. And so they do that, and they do their best to do that. And I start documenting. And whatever they express, I tell them to continue to love it. Continue to open their heart to it. Continue to hold it. And this is all about honoring the feelings that are coming up. As we do, there's this point of magic that happens. There's this opening eventually. Sometimes you have to, stay tuned into it for 5 minutes. Other times, usually it's within a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But there's this magical opening. And that area that they were tuned into starts to warm, and it starts to move, and energy starts to open, tingling and warming. And I'm feeling that all throughout my body as I explain it. As that happens, that's the magic. The doorway to the subconscious just opened.
Okay, so the process itself is fairly gentle and approachable for anybody, but your description earlier is really the depths of the work that happens underneath the surface that they may or may not be aware of the levels of until they connect with it. I do have one question for you, though. You have mentioned several times this radical self-love. It's not the way that you put it. What if someone can't get there?
I just guide them to do that. And sometimes somebody will say, well, I'm having a hard time with that. So I have them honor that part of them that's having the hard time.
That's an important thing that you're saying right now. So you're basically saying you aren't having a hard time with radical self-love. There's a part and a piece of you that now
Correct.
we need to work with. Why are you having a hard time doing that?
Yeah. So, I might even name it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I might even say, okay, I understand that this part of you that's trying to manage this doesn't feel comfortable allowing this. So let's bring our focus to that part and let's express that love and honor and gratitude for that part in its need to try to protect. And let's ask that part if it would be willing to just be a witness to this work versus getting in the way of it.
Which also makes it feel not so overwhelming.
Exactly. So 99% of the time, the part sits off to the side and goes into witness position, and then the client can go right into their experience of radical love and acceptance.
Amazing. And you work virtually.
I work. Yes, I have clients all over the world, just like your podcast.
Yeah, we're all over. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah. So I'm on the web under Bare Medicine Holistic Services or Bare Medicine Herbs, 2 different web addresses go to the same place. And I have a automated calendar. So you just send me an email. It says book a session, but that sends an email to me so I can control my calendar. And then I send you back an email with a link to the calendar. And I might ask you a little bit about your situation so I can have a deeper understanding of what we might be needing to work on. And then I send them a Zoom link and we drop into the work.
Easy. Any final words for our listeners? Anything that you want to leave them with? Any final thoughts?
Yes. And maybe I would love to come back and talk more about this. There is this identity, victim identity, and identity to trauma. And what I'm going to call identity is I'm going to switch that word to attachment. There's this attachment to victimization and attachment to trauma perspectives. And I think it was said the best in Buddhism where they say attachment creates our suffering. And now let's take it back to the original word. Identity to trauma creates more suffering and keeps us in this loop of suffering. And the work that I do is about changing that identity from a trauma identity to higher consciousness identity. And that's really my goal for all the people I work with, is to help them come out. Now, every personality part we have is in a state of victimization with an identity to the trauma that happened to them and repetitive traumas, but also that part has, it's basically keeping us in this loop, and the universe keeps bringing us situations as long as we stay in that loop. So this work brings people out of those loops, changes identity. And here's what I say to all my clients. You are a vibrant, radiant, sacred being of light. That's the truth. And that's the truth that we want to take on as our true identity, right?
And what a great message for people. Thank you, Tommy, so much for being here and for bringing your wisdom and your work.
Thank you so much, Jill. It's been really nice to connect with you again. And if I can come back, let me know. Let's delve into that identity piece.
We'll go deeper.
All right.
That's a wrap for this episode. Honor what landed, release what didn't, and we'll see you next time on The Healing Blueprint.